My name is Susan, and I am 68 years old. I have worked hard my whole life. I raised my son Joseph, all by myself, after my husband Richard passed away too soon. I gave up so much for that boy. I skipped meals so he could eat. I wore the same coat for 10 winters so he could have a new one. And when he grew up and married a woman named Jessica, I thought my sacrifices were finally over. I thought I could rest. I was wrong. Let me tell you about the night that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. It was a warm Saturday evening. Joseph and Jessica were hosting a big family dinner. They said it was to celebrate Joseph's big promotion at work. I was so excited. I put on my nicest dress, the blue one Richard always loved. I brought a sweet potato pie, made from scratch, just like my own grandmother taught me. I walked into that beautiful house with my heart full of joy. But when I looked at the long dining table, covered in white linen and shining plates, I did not see my name anywhere. I saw place cards for Jessica's parents. I saw place cards for her sister, Karen, and Karen's husband, Thomas. I saw place cards for cousins I barely knew. But there was no place card for me. I stood there, holding my warm pie, feeling confused. That is when Jessica walked over, smiling in a way that did not reach her eyes. She pointed her manicured finger toward the kitchen, near the back door. Right next to the trash cans, there was a small, wobbly fold-out chair. A paper plate sat on top of a cardboard box beside it. "Sorry, this table's for family only," Jessica said, smirking like she had just told a joke. Family only. I was the boy's mother. I was the one who worked 2 jobs so he could go to college. I was the one who sat by his hospital bed for 3 nights straight when he had pneumonia as a child. And now, in this house that I had helped pay for more times than I could count, I was not family. I looked at Joseph, hoping he would say something, hoping he would stand up for me like I had always stood up for him. But he just looked down at his plate and stayed quiet. My own son said nothing. My hands started to shake. I did not want to make a scene, so I walked to that little fold-out chair by the trash cans and I sat down. I placed my pie on the cardboard box. I could hear everyone laughing and talking at the big table, just a few feet away, like I was invisible. Like I was nothing. But that was not even the worst part of the night. Near the end of the dinner, when everyone had eaten their fill of food I had paid for, Jessica walked over to me with a folded piece of paper in her hand. She placed it gently on my lap, like she was handing me a gift. "Since you're always so generous, Susan," she said, "we figured you wouldn't mind covering tonight's catering bill. It's only fair since you're basically part of this family." I opened the paper with trembling fingers. The number on that bill was more than my entire monthly pension. $3,200. For a party I was not even allowed to sit at the table for. I looked up at Joseph one more time, silently begging him to say this was a joke, to say his wife did not really mean it. But he just shrugged his shoulders and said, "Mom, you always help out. It's not a big deal, not a big deal." I felt something crack inside my chest. All those years of sacrifice, all those nights I went without so he could have more. And this is what it had come to. A fold-out chair by the trash, and a bill for a party I was too unimportant to be seated at. I did not cry that night, not in front of them. I smiled, folded the paper carefully, and put it in my purse. But inside, something old and tired in me had finally woken up. Before we continue, let us know in the comment section where in the world you're tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. And if this story speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. To understand how I ended up in that fold-out chair, I need to take you back many years, to when Joseph was just a little boy with scraped knees and a gap-toothed smile. Richard and I got married young. We did not have much money, but we had so much love. We bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, and we filled it with laughter and the smell of Sunday morning pancakes. When Richard passed away from a sudden heart attack, Joseph was only 12 years old. I remember holding my son that night, both of us crying, promising each other we would get through it together. And we did. I took extra shifts at the hospital where I worked as a nurse's aide. I cleaned houses on the weekends. I never complained, because Joseph was my whole world. When he got into college, I took out loans in my own name so he would not have to struggle. When he wanted to start his own small business years later, I gave him my savings, the money Richard and I had set aside for our retirement. I never once asked for anything back. I only asked that he remember where he came from. When Joseph met Jessica, I welcomed her with open arms. I thought maybe, finally, my son had found someone who would love him the way I did. Someone who would appreciate family. But slowly, over the years, I began to notice small things. Jessica would roll her eyes when I mentioned old family traditions. She would correct me in front of others, telling me my way of doing things was old-fashioned or not how we do things now. Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself that love means patience. I told myself that families have disagreements, but they always come back together in the end. I helped pay for their wedding. I helped with the down payment on their house. When their son, little Thomas, was born, I helped pay the hospital bills when their insurance fell short. I never wrote any of it down. I never asked for a single dollar back. I gave because that is what mothers do. That is what I thought family meant. But that night, sitting on that cold, wobbly fold-out chair, holding a bill for money I did not have, I finally understood something painful. I had spent so many years giving everything I had that I had forgotten to ask a simple question. What about me? As I sat there in that kitchen, listening to the laughter I was not invited to be part of, I made a quiet decision in my heart. Something was about to change. I just did not know yet how big that change would be, or how much it would cost every single person sitting at that table who thought I would stay silent forever. Because 2 days later, I received a phone call that would turn my entire world upside down and reveal a secret that Joseph and Jessica had been hiding from me for years. 2 days after that awful dinner, my phone rang while I was washing dishes. I did not recognize the number, but something made me answer it anyway. Hello, is this Susan? I'm calling from First Trust Bank regarding your business loan account. I nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, I said. I don't have a business loan. There must be some mistake. The woman on the line paused. Ma'am, our records show a loan taken out in your name 2 years ago for $45,000. Your home was listed as collateral. Unfortunately, the account is 4 months behind on payments, and we are required to begin the default process. My legs went weak. I had to sit down at my kitchen table. There has to be a mistake, I said again, my voice shaking now. I never signed anything like that. I understand this is upsetting, ma'am. I'd recommend visiting a branch in person with your identification so we can pull the original documents. I hung up the phone and sat there in silence for a long time. My house. The little brick house Richard and I bought together 40 years ago. The house where Joseph took his first steps. The house I had almost paid off completely before I retired. Someone had used it as collateral without my permission. I did not sleep that night. I kept thinking back over the years, trying to remember if I had ever signed papers I did not fully understand. And then it hit me. 2 years ago, Joseph had come to me with a folder of documents, saying it was just some paperwork for his taxes, and asking me to sign where he had marked with little yellow stickers. I trusted him completely. I signed without reading every single word, because he was my son, and I never imagined he would ever hurt me. The next morning, I put on my good coat and went straight to the bank. I sat across from a young loan officer who pulled up my file on her computer screen. My hands were trembling as she slid a stack of papers toward me. There it was, my signature, right at the bottom of a business loan application for something called Jessica's Boutique Dreams LLC. I stared at that signature for a long time. It did look like mine, but something about the curve of the S felt slightly off. Just enough for me to notice, since I had signed my name thousands of times in my life. "Ma'am," the loan officer said gently, "if you believe this signature was forged, you have the right to dispute the loan and file a fraud report. But I have to tell you, the house is listed as collateral, and the missed payments have already triggered a warning notice." I left the bank that day feeling like the ground beneath me had turned to sand. Everything I had worked for my whole life, all of it was at risk now because of people I loved and trusted more than anyone in this world. I did not go home right away. Instead, I drove to see my old friend, a woman who lived 2 streets over and used to work as a legal assistant before she retired. We had known each other for over 20 years, through church and through raising our children together. When I told her what happened, her face went pale. "Susan," she said, holding my hand across her kitchen table, "you need to gather every single paper you can find. Bank statements, old tax documents, anything with your signature on it. Do not confront them yet. Not until you have proof. People like this, when they feel caught, they get dangerous. They will lie faster than you can blink." Her words scared me, but I knew she was right. So for the next several days, I quietly gathered every document I could find. I went through old boxes in my closet, old drawers, even called my bank to request copies of statements going back 2 years. My friend helped me organize everything into a folder, and she gave me the name of a lawyer who specialized in elder financial abuse, a term I had never even heard before that week. It was strange and painful to learn that what was happening to me had an actual name, and that it happened to other grandmothers just like me. During this time, I still saw Joseph and Jessica for a Sunday dinner, because I did not want them to suspect anything. It was hard, sitting across the table from my own son, smiling and asking about his week, while inside my heart was breaking into pieces. I watched Jessica laugh and talk about a new dress shop she wanted to open downtown, and I realized with a cold, sick feeling that this must be connected to the loan. I decided to test the waters gently. "Joseph," I said carefully, "I got a strange call from the bank about a loan with my name on it. Do you know anything about that?" His face changed instantly. Just for a second, but I saw it. A flicker of panic, quickly covered up by a forced laugh. "Oh, that old thing? Mom, don't worry about it. It's just some paperwork mix-up. I'll handle it, okay? You don't need to stress yourself over grown-up business stuff." Grown-up business stuff, as if I had not managed my own finances for 50 years. As if I were a child who needed to be handled and quieted. I nodded and let it go for the night, pretending to believe him, even though every word he said made the pit in my stomach grow heavier. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned pale, my mind spinning with questions I was too afraid to ask out loud. 3 days later, everything changed again. I was in my garden, trimming the rose bushes Richard had planted for me so many years ago, trying to find some peace among the flowers, when I heard a car pull up outside my house. It was not Joseph's car. It was a plain white van with a company logo I did not recognize. A man in a gray uniform walked up my driveway holding a clipboard and a thick yellow envelope. My heart began to pound as he approached. "Are you Susan, the owner of this property?" he asked. "Yes," I said, wiping the dirt from my hands. "Can I help you?" He handed me the envelope without much emotion, like he had done this 100 times before. "This is a legal notice regarding the property at this address. You'll want to read it carefully." My fingers shook as I tore open that envelope right there on my front porch, rose clippers still in my other hand. My eyes scanned down the page, and the words seemed to blur together until 3 of them stood out clearly, printed in bold black letters at the top of the page. Notice of foreclosure sale. The sale date listed was only 18 days away. I stood frozen on my porch, the summer sun beating down on me, the paper trembling in my hands, and I felt something inside me shift from fear into something else entirely, something sharper, something that refused to be pushed around any longer. Because in 18 days, I was either going to lose everything Richard and I had built together, or I was going to fight back with everything I had left. I stood on my porch for a long time after the delivery man drove away, staring at those bold black words. Notice of foreclosure sale. 18 days. My hands were shaking, but something inside me had changed. I was done being afraid. I called my friend right away, and within the hour, I was sitting in the office of the lawyer she had told me about. His name was Mr. Alvarez, and he had kind eyes but a very serious voice. I spread every paper I had gathered across his desk. The loan documents, my old bank statements, the folder Joseph had given me 2 years ago with the yellow sticker notes. He looked at my signature on the loan papers for a long time, then pulled out an old check I had written to my church, comparing the two signatures side by side under a small lamp. "Susan," he said slowly, "I believe this signature was traced. Look at how stiff the lines are here, compared to your natural handwriting. This is common in forgery cases. We can fight this, but we need to move fast, and we need proof of who actually filled out this loan application." That same afternoon, Mr. Alvarez helped me file an official fraud dispute with the bank and a police report. He also filed something called an emergency motion to pause the foreclosure sale while the investigation happened. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again, even just a little. But proving who did it was still a problem. The bank could see the loan was suspicious, but they needed clear evidence connecting it to Jessica. That is when my granddaughter, little Thomas's older cousin on Jessica's side, a sweet teenage girl who used to spend summers helping me in my garden, called me out of the blue. She had heard whispers at a family gathering about Aunt Jessica's boutique money problems, and she felt something was wrong. She told me that Jessica's shop had been struggling for months, and that Jessica had been panicking about a big payment deadline right around the time my strange loan appeared. With that piece of information, Mr. Alvarez requested the bank's records showing which computer and which bank branch the loan application had been processed at. It turned out the application had been submitted online from an account registered to Jessica's email address, using my personal information that she must have gathered from old papers around the house during family visits. We finally had the proof we needed. Mr. Alvarez suggested we handle this carefully through the proper legal channels rather than a shouting match at a family dinner. So one quiet afternoon, I asked Joseph to meet me alone at a small coffee shop, without Jessica. I needed to look my son in the eyes and give him one last chance to tell me the truth himself. He looked tired when he sat down across from me, dark circles under his eyes. "Joseph," I said gently, though my heart was pounding, "I know about the loan. I know it was Jessica who signed my name. I have proof now. Before this goes any further, I need to know, did you know about this from the beginning?" My son's shoulders sank, and for a moment, I saw the little boy I used to tuck into bed, scared and ashamed. "I didn't know at first, Mom," he whispered. "I found out a few months ago when the payments started getting missed. I should have told you right away. I was scared, and Jessica kept saying she would fix it before you ever found out. I'm so sorry. I let you sit in that chair by the trash, and I let her hand you that bill, and I said nothing, because I didn't know how to face what she had already done to you. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I did not let them fall. Being sorry is not enough anymore, Joseph. I raised you to be honest and kind. Somewhere along the way, you forgot that silence can hurt just as much as lying." Joseph did not fight the truth after that. With his cooperation and the clear evidence from the bank, Jessica was formally charged with fraud and identity theft. The court case took a few months, but eventually, the loan was canceled completely because it had been proven fraudulent, and my house was safe. Jessica received a criminal record and had to pay back what remained of the loan through a court-ordered payment plan. Her boutique dream, the one she had built on my stolen name, closed within the year. Joseph, though not legally responsible for the forgery itself, was deeply shaken by everything that happened. He moved out of the house for a while, staying with a friend, trying to figure out how he had let his marriage and his choices drift so far from the values I had raised him with. As for me, something beautiful started to grow out of all that pain. My friend from church introduced me to a small community group that helped elderly people who had experienced financial abuse. I began sharing my story with other grandmothers who had gone through similar things, women who had also been taken advantage of by people they loved and trusted. Slowly, I found a new kind of purpose, one that did not involve emptying my bank account for someone else's comfort. I used the little savings I had left, along with some help from that community group, to start a small baking business from my own kitchen, selling the same sweet potato pies I had once brought to that terrible dinner. Word spread quickly through my neighborhood, and soon I had more orders than I could handle alone. For the first time in my life, the money coming in was mine, earned through my own hands, for my own future. Joseph and I slowly rebuilt our relationship, but on new terms. I told him clearly that I loved him with all my heart, but I would never again allow myself to be treated as something to be used rather than someone to be loved. He apologized many times, and over many months, he proved through his actions, not just his words, that he understood. He started visiting me not to ask for money, but simply to sit with me, to help in the garden, to bring little Thomas over so we could bake cookies together on Sunday afternoons. Jessica and I never became close again, and that was all right. Some relationships cannot be repaired, and that is a hard but important truth to accept. But I made peace with that, because I finally understood something I wish I had learned decades earlier. Real family does not make you sit by the trash cans and hand you the bill. Real family makes room for you at the table, always. Looking back now, I do not regret the years I spent giving so much of myself to my son. Love and sacrifice are beautiful things, and I would not trade the memories of raising Joseph for anything in this world. But I learned that true kindness must always include kindness toward yourself, too. Giving everything away, until there is nothing left of you, is not love, it is disappearing. These days, my kitchen smells like cinnamon and warm pie crust almost every morning. My granddaughter visits often, and she has taught me that speaking up, even when your voice shakes, is one of the bravest things a person can do. I sit at my own table now, in my own home, surrounded by people who choose to be there, not because they need something from me, but because they simply love me. And every single evening, before I go to sleep, I look at an old photograph of Richard on my nightstand, and I whisper the same words to him. We built something worth protecting, my love, and I finally found the strength to protect it, not just for our family, but for myself too.